great many interesting anecdotes that happened during the American Revolutionary War are likely to be lost to posterity by the negligence of the parties concerned in not recording them, so that in future time they may be resorted to as throwing light on the eventful crisis of this important era.
Along North Maple Avenue in Basking Ridge lies a house that remains empty for a majority of the year, but has an intricate story to tell. Dedicated patriots, visionaries, and humanitarians resided on the property in the midst of a country in transition, many of whom held key governmental positions and laid the foundation of this great nation. There are three major parts of the Boudinout Southard Ross property: the house, the barn, and the outbuilding. The house was originally a small farmhouse, but it reached its current size in 1940. Since it was built in 1777, countless historical figures have resided on the property, many of whom have not received the notoriety they deserve. The first and most prominent of these owners was Elias Boudinout. Boudinout was born on May 2, 1740. As his political career progressed, he crossed paths with countless founding fathers before becoming one himself. When he and his family lived in Philadelphia, he was neighbors with the brilliant Benjamin Franklin, who established the school that Boudinout attended in his early years. Benjamin Franklin's influence sparked young Boudinout's interest in patriotism and justice. Later on in his life, he studied law in Princeton with Richard Stockton, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. At the age of 20, Boudinout began practicing law and eventually married the sister of Mr. Stockton, Hannah. The four created a strong family alliance dedicated to the patriot cause. Boudinout eventually moved his family to Basking Ridge against the backdrop of rising tensions between England and America. It was there that he purchased and built the estate in 1777, right at the cusp of the American Revolution. The Boudinout home lay a mere 8 miles from George Washington's headquarters. This is the house where Boudinout would introduce his friend Alexander Hamilton to Washington, a relationship that would one day be historic.
New Jersey is known as the cockpit of the Revolution in some histories. It is a place where some of the most internecine and nasty violence takes place over the course of the war, especially the early course of the war. After the Howe brothers, the British generals and the military leaders, succeed in New York, driving Washington south across the state, this becomes a place where wherever the British armies are, those Tories, those people who want to remain loyal to the crown, are empowered. And wherever the British armies aren't, patriot groups, people against them, are empowered. And so you have a real Civil War quality to the violence over here. And you certainly have it in and around Boudinout's life.
Washington grew to respect Boudinout as a friend and political confidant, leading to his recommendation for Boudinout to be made Commissary General for Prisoners in 1777. The commissary was not only responsible for the enemy prisoners, but for supplying and taking care of the American prisoners held by the British during the war. In November 1982, Boudinout was elected the President of the Continental Congress, the first governing body in our country's history. As President, he signed the Treaty of Paris, ending hostilities with Great Britain. Throughout the early years of the United States history, Boudinout corresponded with influential leaders such as George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and Alexander Hamilton. They exchanged military strategies, discussed foreign affairs, and conferred on domestic policy.
Boudinout helps bring Alexander Hamilton to America, and another sign of he shows up at key moments in the history and formation of this country. Hamilton is introduced to Washington and other greats of our country to be by Boudinout, and they see the brilliance of this guy, and Hamilton goes on to found many, many aspects of how this country is fundamentally put together. So Elias deserves enormous credit for that as well.
The formal United States government was formed in 1789, and New Jersey elected Boudinout to the House of Representatives. While on committee, Boudinout proposed a bill that would recommend a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to be observed. The bill would eventually get passed and establish the national holiday of Thanksgiving that is celebrated even today. In October of 1795, President Washington appointed him the Director of the United States Mint, a position he held until his retirement in 1805. Boudinout was extremely adept at his accounting and left the U.S. Mint in excellent condition for the future. President Woodrow Wilson spoke about Boudinout's service to the school and said,
As a student of American history and affairs, I can subscribe with a great deal of heartiness to what you say of the distinguished and disinterested services rendered by Elias Boudinout to this country. And, as myself an officer and servant of Princeton, it gives me the deepest pleasure to echo all that you say of his untiring and invaluable services to the college, which he assisted to nurse through its youth. There is no name more honored amongst us.
Boudinout was not educated here, but he had a lifelong affiliation with Princeton and was a trustee of the university for a long time, into the 18 teens anyway. Most of his life after being involved with the Revolution, in terms of public life, took place around here. He was a member of the nascent Federalist Party, the party that's affiliated with President Washington and Alexander Hamilton in the 1790s, that emerges in opposition to those who begin to criticize the Washington-Hamilton edicts and policies. And that opposition is headed by another Princetonian, James Madison, and Thomas Jefferson. Boudinout's not a rabid or sort of a violent partisan, but he is on the sides of the Federalists. And like them, like a certain vein of them, to include Hamilton, he has an interest in abolition, the ending of slavery, in Native American rights.
Boudinout had to travel a great deal to keep up with his active political career, which meant spending great amounts of time away from his wife Hannah and daughter Susan in Basking Ridge. Mrs. Boudinout took care of the house and was a part of an elite society in New Jersey, often entertaining important guests like George Washington and his wife Martha, as well as Alexander Hamilton and his wife Elizabeth. In addition to being dedicated to his work, Boudinout was a dedicated family man.
Good government generally begins in the family. If the moral character of a people once degenerate, their political character must soon follow.
An often unexplored facet to Boudinout's personality is his commitment to ensuring that all Americans receive justice and equality. He strongly believed in the words of the Constitution and said, "The equality and rights of men here contemplated are natural, essential, and unalienable, such as the security of life, liberty, and property. These should be the firm foundation of every good government, as they will apply to all nations at all times, and may properly be called a universal law."
As we'll learn throughout his life, Elias was a tremendous humanitarian, and he reached deep into his pockets. Proof of this will come, to help get money to people, whether it was individual soldiers or the British, to get some kind of humane treatment to the captured. And this is at a time where that just was not happening a lot. Right? They were very poorly treated. Proof of this is the fact that Washington and others helped get Boudinout reparations after the war to get him back a portion of the money he had actually given over from his own pocket.
Boudinout strongly believed that slavery should be abolished. A respected friend of Boudinout's, James Pemberton, once wrote that when prominent men like Boudinout step forth in the cause of the oppressed Africans, it affords additional encouragement to our society to persevere in their arduous undertaking by inspiring hopes that their endeavors to abolish domestic slavery will finally be crowned with success, and this great national iniquity be thus forever removed from amongst the people of the United States. Pemberton was also a member of the Pennsylvania Abolition Society, where he succeeded Benjamin Franklin as president in 1790. Boudinout's beliefs about equal rights compelled him to stand up not only for the rights of African Americans, but also for the rights of Native Americans and women. Boudinout felt great sympathy for the Native Americans, who he felt were wrongly sold for slaves, injuriously oppressed, and driven from their lawful and native possessions by the Europeans. Boudinout's leadership in New Jersey and his support for the Native Americans was one of the reasons why the Indians of the state had all along maintained an intercourse of great cordiality and friendship with the inhabitants. One famous Native American, Buck Otawi, had such respect for Boudinout's sensibilities that he later on changed his name to Elias Boudinout. In 1818, this Native American went on to be inspired by Boudinout and argued against the Indian Removal Act and became the editor of a Native American newspaper. Boudinout's love and respect for nature mirrored that of the Native Americans. This led him to establish Princeton University's Natural History Department in 1805. Furthermore, Mr. Boudinout was a great lover of trees. Many he planted with his own hand, which became landmarks of rare beauty. His concern for the environment was truly extraordinary, considering not many people in this time considered it to be of importance. He was a true visionary at many levels. Boudinout's respect for women came from his love for his wife and his daughter. He said in a speech that he delivered in Princeton,
"The rights of women are no longer strange sounds to the American ear. They are now heard as familiar terms in every part of the United States, and I devoutly hope that the day is not far distant when we shall find them dignifying, in a distinguishing code, the jurisprudence of the several states of the Union."
So you open this book and it's the life of Elias Boudinout, and you wonder, you marvel at all the amazing moments in his life, that these amazing things happened during the Revolutionary War, his whole humanitarian commitment. But why is he important? Why does it feel like it's unjust that the world doesn't know more about this man? Boudinout is the first guy that Alexander Hamilton comes to see in the United States. Right? Boudinout is the man who helped lead how the prisoners would be treated, both British and American. So our soldiers that were captured over there, he ensured got as best treatment as possible. Boudinout founded the American Bible Society. Boudinout gave life to an American Indian that he adopted and treated as if it were his own. Boudinout was head of the U.S. Mint. Boudinout was head of the Constitutional Congress. Boudinout is the man who authorizes Franklin, John Jay, and John Adams to finish the peace with the British. Boudinout is an amazing figure full of firsts, but he's also an amazing figure for his commitment to his own personal sense of values and what was important to him.
Although his name has unjustifiably fallen into obscurity, Boudinout's memory and service to his country are commemorated by his house in Basking Ridge. Not only was he a steadfast patriot, Boudinout was an exemplary philanthropist and stood for liberty and justice for all.
After the American Revolution, Boudinout decided, and after he had served George Washington well, he became very involved in the American Bible Society and decided to relocate. So he contacted his attorney, who said, "Please tell my neighbor, Henry Southard, I'm desirous of selling my property," which the lawyer did, and as a result, Henry Southard purchased all the property in the early 1780s. In about 1786, one of their many children, one of the many Southard children, was born. He would end up being Samuel Lewis Southard, one of the highlights of the early American Congress. Samuel was educated at the Basking Ridge Classical School. One of his best friends was Theodore Frelinghuysen, who accompanied him to the College of New Jersey, which today we call Princeton University. Samuel was very brilliant, became an attorney, entered into politics, and served under several presidents, one of which would have been, he became Secretary of the Navy, and eventually, during the administration of President John Tyler, became President Pro Tem of the Congress. However, in between, he left the Congress, and he was not only a senator, he was Chief Justice of the New Jersey Supreme Court, and he was Governor of New Jersey, 1831-1832, was disenchanted and went back into the Congress. He and his father were the first father and son combination in the United States Congress to serve at the same time. That would have been about 1820, 1821, and they sponsored what was called the Missouri Compromise Bill.
The next influential owner of the Basking Ridge property was Samuel Southard. He was born in Basking Ridge in 1787, in the house that his father bought from Elias Boudinout in 1785. He attended the Brick Academy that still remains in the center of Basking Ridge and graduated from Princeton University in 1804. Like Boudinout, he studied law and got involved in New Jersey politics. Southard served as a U.S. Senator in the early 1800s. President James Monroe appointed him Secretary of Navy. Samuel Southard remained in office as Secretary of Navy under President John Quincy Adams, with whom he developed a close friendship. He also took up duties as the Secretary of Treasury and Secretary of War, where he proved to be highly effective. After several other owners, Edmund Ross, breeder of thoroughbred horses, purchased the home in 1952. He was the last owner of this estate. When he passed away in 2005, his 4 children honored Ross's wish to preserve the land and house and decided to sell the 61-acre property to the Somerset County Park Commission.
Place. That's the one thing this place has more than anything else. The home is nice, the home feels spacious, it feels grand, but there's something about the grounds and the way it sits on the face of the earth with its southern slope and how it always seems to be in the sun, or there's geese coming from overhead. There are many things about this place that speak to a stillness, a quality that allows you to stand here and think back to what it might have been like when the Revolutionary soldiers were walking up and down the road, and when people were running freely, knowing that they were away from the British and it was okay to relax. There's something about being here on this land that triggers emotions in many people. I've seen it happen repeatedly. It's a hard thing to describe and get someone to understand, which is why you need to come visit.
The Boudinout Southard Ross property and its owners played a key role in American history. The house tells an interesting story about the forgotten visionaries who helped lay the foundation of our great nation.